Hi, my name is Sam Sandoval. I'm a faculty and an extension specialist at the University of California, Davis, and today I'm going to be talking to you about environmental flows in California. So, when we're talking about environmental flows, what are we defining? It is good to start by defining what is the environment and what are the flows. Um, Environmental flows actually refers to flows that are beneficial for the ecosystems, that the things that live within a river and along the river, but also to benefit that also can meet human objectives. Specifically in this lecture, I'm going to be focusing more in in-stream flows, so flows that are beneficial for the environment, not considering at this moment or not focusing that much on the human portion of it. So just trying to understand how can we define flows that will be beneficial for the things that live in the river and along the river. So specifically for that, when we are saying we want to benefit the environment, what is that environment? What is the environment? So we're referring to the things that live within the river. Again, think of putting your goggles, stick your head in the river, and what is living underneath. That's the environment that we want to protect, and also the things that live along the river and throughout the riparian corridor. So we're looking to freshwater ecosystems and riparian ecosystems. And that the freshwater ecosystems can refer to mammals, flora, fish communities, basic primary productivity of food, in this case phytoplankton, zooplankton, benthic macroinvertebrates, and so on. And for riparian ecosystems, I mean, you see typically what are the plant communities, what are the trees and the bushes that live along the river, some of the birds that nest in there, some of the invertebrates, reptiles and amphibians, and some mammals that live close to it. Yes, this benefits the terrestrial ecosystem, but that is not the main focus. Now, when we're talking about flows, what are the specific flows that we're talking? So we're talking about water quantity, quality, the habitat, and the connectivity. So in terms of water quantity, we're talking about how things change within a year, so the seasonality, and also how things change throughout different years. And for estimating those changes, we have a specific flow characteristics that we can estimate for characterizing this intra-annual, so the seasonal and inter-annual variability, magnitude, timing, frequency, duration, rate of change. Um, Also the habitat, so how the river look like. Again, if you put your goggles and stick your head into the river, um, what are how the river look underneath? What are does it looks very deep? Does it has a pool? Does it look very shallow? It might be a riffle. Does it look that is meandering? Does it looks that what type of sediment is in there? Is it a bedrock? How the river look like, or is it a sandy river, or is it a river that has a lot of clay and a lot of particles moving along, or is it a very clear water river? Does it has trees coming along, or what's that's what we refer of habitat. Connectivity has to be connected from its headwaters all the way to the ocean. And actually the rivers do not end in just right at the mouth of the river. The rivers provide all this set of nutrients and sediment and flow that actually benefit all the fisheries at the mouth of the river and some miles in front. The most productive fisheries are at the interface of this fresh water and saline water, and this um, cold regions. This is where we have the most important fisheries in the world. So the river doesn't end when it meets the ocean, but it reaches the influence. It reaches many different miles, thousands of miles, so transporting all this sediment, providing all these nutrients, and so on. The river has to be connected not only longitudinally from the headwaters all the way through the ocean, but also transversally from riverbed to for one riverbank, right riverbank to the left riverbank. Connect the floodplains, connect also the banks. Also, it has to be connected or is vertically connected to groundwater and surface water. And of course the water quality, temperature, TS, DO, and dissolved oxygen, metals, and so on. So now think about what is the natural hydrology of California. This is a perfect map of how really rivers are the arteries of the earth. Look how they are connecting all the different parts of the state. And so think that every of these arteries may have a specific signature. So how the river flow within a year and throughout different years. This flow signature, we call it a flow regime. And again, this is one of those flow regimes that it is a combined flow regime, as we're going to be seeing, that has this typical hump of a snow melt and this variation at the beginning from rains. So in fact, we have identified that California has 9 distinctive flow regimes that goes from this snow melt in these areas all the way to rain dominated. When a rain happens, you're going to have these high flows, all the way to this combination of snow melt and rain signatures. So these are, when I was talking about these 9 flow regimes, these are actually the 9 flow regimes. The ones that are associated with snow are these two. This snow melt and high elevation, low precipitation flow regimes that they, when there is no, so throughout the year they will have this base flow. And these are in the high elevation when we have this accumulation of snow. As snow is accumulating and later in March, April, spring is coming, we have the snow melting. And as the snow is melting, the flow on those rivers start increasing because of the accumulation of the melting snow now into the rivers. It will reach this kind of peak of the snow melt, and the snow is almost gone by the start of the summer. Then the flows will start going down, and then it will be this portion sustained by groundwater, by water coming from the soil moisture and the ground that are still feeding those rivers. So this will be a snow melt regime. Then we have the rain regimes, and basically these rain regimes occurring here. They can be winter storm, perennial, they can be flashy and ephemeral, they can be rain and seasonal groundwater. But the idea of this is that these rivers respond when a storm occurs. So think that a rain is coming, and then you will have these high flows, and then as the rain is receding, they will have this low. But the reality is that there is no snow that will be feeding into them. So they will depend on the rain events that are occurring throughout the rainy season. Now, if these two have a baby, if these two are combined, then we're going to have these mixed regimes where they have this snow accumulation and this hump of the snow, but also they will have this variability at the beginning of the season, and that will be because of the rain events occurring throughout the rainy season. So they have this combination of both. These are the 9 signatures of flow of how California evolved. Why is this important? Because from these flow signatures, we can estimate a specific components, specific parts of the flow regime, of these flow regimes, that might be relevant to sustain the environment. In this case, think that some of these, so specifically we have determined 5 functional flow components, 5 portions of the flow regime that we know that are relevant for the ecosystem. So these low season based flows, they will help to sustain what is living in the river during this stressful period. All the small fish, all the amphibians, all the invertebrates that are living there, they will get into in the river and try to live during this period where there is no rain and the low is naturally low. Then this first fall pulse, it is this pulse of flow that will get rid of any water quality problems. These wet season base flows, and this will send cues for any fish to migrate upstream. This wet season base flow will provide enough flow during the river corridor so actually fish can migrate upstream. And they will also clean some of the sediment bars, will clean some of the sediment at the bottom of the river. So when fishes are spawning, their eggs can fall in between those spaces of the gravels and then cover it so the eggs will not be washed away. These large peak flows, they help to move sediment and to connect the floodplains and to bring all these nutrients into the river, that the nutrients are kind of the fertilizers, are the ones that are going to provide a good input so um, plants can be generated, and from plants all the different things that are living can eat from. So, and then spring recession, which is a period of time as the flow is going down to have it enough warning for the juveniles and the juvenile fish to actually move around and look for refugia, to get into a cold place and with enough food so they can actually survive the dry flow season. Some of the amphibians, the flow will be long enough or it will not be drastically going down so their eggs can still survive, so the amphibians can move and so on. So all what I was telling you can be associated again with some biotic functions, and for frogs, for steelheads, for certain plants, but also for the different abiotic functions that are moving the physical habitat of it. So that's the importance of these functional flows. And as you can see, what I'm drawing here is a hydrograph that can be drawn and is touching all these different functional flows, but leave some room actually for humans to draw water from it. This is extremely important because we have determined all of these and associated functional flow metrics. So for each of these boxes or each of these seasons, we have estimated for fall poles, what is the magnitude, when does it happen, and some of the duration in terms of days. For the dry season low flow, when does it start, when does it end, what are the magnitude of the flows, how long does it last, does it has a rate of change. From the spring recession, the same, when it starts, when it ends, what is the rate of change, so how fast the flow change from day to day, what is the timing, these flows, when do they happen, what is their timing, the duration, does it happen every year, does it happen every other year, and so on. Not only for every region, but also we have stratified them by dry, wet, and moderate years. And this is the variability that we are also bringing throughout the different through different years. For all of these, we have estimated for not only reference gauges, but for every reach of California. So every 200-meter reach, you can go into a map and estimate and see or to have the quantities of water, all these different functional flows throughout the state. We have also developed a calculator where you can bring your own data and estimate what will be this kind of fall pulse flows. How do they happen in a given year? You can also estimate the flow regime for your own data. Estimate these boxes again of fall pulse in here. You can see how did they happen in a given years. You can download your data. This is tools that are available for everyone. So as you can see, we have estimated functional flows throughout the state. And why is this important? Because these are based on the natural flow regime, and they are indeed meeting all, without discriminating, all the freshwater, riparian, and terrestrial ecosystems that were native to the state. So we have information that can benefit the environment throughout the state, but not only an individual species, but the entire ecosystems. Now, as I mentioned to you, flows are not only flows of quantity. You also need to bring the habitat, the connectivity, and the water quality. So there might be cases when you might be wondering, am I actually benefiting or providing good habitat, connectivity, or water quality throughout the state. So we have developed also some methods to refine, to adjust those boxes, those estimations, so you're making sure that you have good habitat, connectivity, and water quality. Specifically, we have developed, and again, this is at our lab in from with some colleagues and from Utah State that were before students here at UC Davis, that we developed methods to determine this habitat and good connectivity conditions. So from flow regimes, we have estimated what are the geomorphology, how the river look like. Um, and again, put your goggles, see what is under the river, see think of how does it look like. Does it look very shallow? Does it look like you have a bed undulating, that sometimes the bed goes down and up? Does it have large pools? Is it meandering? What is the sediment size? We have identified those and relate not only that geomorphology, but a range of velocities and depths that occur at different flows with preferential curves. So certain species, what are the specific velocity and depth that they like? Um, and determine these maps of um, ecology response, where a given species might prefer to stay because of the depth and velocity conditions, and where might be avoided. So this concept of a habitat simulation, so from flow to how the river look like and what is the preference of a species and how that look spatially distributed in that reach, we were able to estimate what are not only these uh, fingerprints of flow regimes, but also these fingerprints of how the river look like, what are the channel types. This is an example of the Sacramento Basin, where you can see that we have, in this case, 10 different channel types. And associated with those channel types, it can be the specific sediment composition, boulder bedrock, boulders, gravel cobbles, similarly here, gravel cobbles, and so on. And then how do they look like? Bed undulating, riffle pools, step pool cascades. This in the upper headwaters where you see kind of the river going from in this kind of stepwise, or that they look like steps, and when it has just this small cascade, it comes into a small pool and then onto the next step and then a small cascade and a pool and so on. This we did an enormous amount of field data collection, and more than 1,000 field sites that we collected, and then we classified what are the characteristic channels, what are the channel types that are predominant, and then we extrapolated using some artificial intelligence, some fancy regression equations throughout the state. We are also, as of we're speaking, using this generating terrain or generating 3D images of each of these different channel types. And why is that? Because with that we can run some hydraulic models and estimate these and some of these preferential curves to estimate the response of ecosystems. And we're trying it to do not only for these channel types, but also for the smaller size of this one, or the extra small, medium, large, and extra large size of all of these different channel types. We have collected data for all these regions throughout the state. And as I mentioned, these are all the field sites that we have gone through. And out of all these field sites where we collected data and we did these cross sections and estimated if the bed was undulating, what was the slopes, and what was the sediment composition, we classified all of them. And out of that classification, then we start predicting what will be the different channel types throughout the state. So we, as of we're speaking, we know what are the specific forms, what are the channel types that are every 200 meters throughout the state. That is super cool. And basically what we are trying to do here is trying to address this habitat and connectivity. What is the specific forms that are and the connectivity for making sure that we can support in-stream flows that are beneficial for the environment. Similarly, we have developed these communities of fishes. We have identified different communities of fishes and fishes that are umbrella, that are that can be used as a good bioindicator to work with it and make sure that, given that this is a good bioindicator, that will provide, if we are providing habitat to this good bioindicator, it will be beneficial for the entire ecosystems. And then developing this direct flow ecology relationship. So given a certain flow, will that be beneficial in what way for this umbrella species? So as you can see, we have been able not only to, with the ecohydrology, these functional flows estimated throughout the state, but we have data on geomorphology, on connectivity to, and in species to actually be quite explicit throughout the state. And that's where we are going. We're also including water quality in some of these modeling efforts and in some different locations to make sure that we are not only covering this water quantity and habitat and connectivity, but also the quality. So this is where we are. This is a very exciting time to work in environmental flows in the state, because it is encompassing all the main pieces, all the main ingredients that we have to sustain the environment. Uh, Similarly, as we have the natural stream flow, we are also developing an altered stream flow. So we're estimating how we went from these very pristine rivers that were function to now an Instream flow classification that it says where we have low disturbance places or low disturbance locations where things hasn't been altered that much. When we have this urban alteration or alteration because of urban um, land use, also some alteration because of agriculture, of reservoirs, mid disturbance. So some of those low disturbance sites look like this. Some of the ones that have low disturbance and high withdrawals may look now extremely altered and compared to the ones that we have seen before. Reservoir storage, where they look like very linear change, robotic flow regimes. Agriculture, where we have a, artificially high flows during this wet season for crop production and so on. Urban, when again we have this also highly altered, very steady flows because of discharge, and these high flows because of stormwater discharge. So this is where we are in in-stream flows. It's been a lot of work. A lot of this it comes out of all these different literature that now is available in all these different websites, and it is a very exciting time to work in environmental flows for the state of California. Thank you for listening.